This is Digital Dialogue, where we have conversations that motivate, support, and inspire others to become the best version of themselves. Today we're talking with Mtende Roll, who's the author of the new book, Poetic Persona. Mtende, how are you?
I'm doing really good. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about myself and hopefully something could land with people watching. So my name is Mtende Roll, as Darren mentioned, born and raised in South Africa. I've been living here in North Carolina for 8 years now. Time flies very, very quickly. I dabble in many things. I like to call myself a multi-passionate being. I have a lot of creative pursuits as well as business pursuits. The business side is owning and managing property. Got my real estate license this year, which is exciting. And creative stuff is definitely my poetry. Published my first book this year, which is exciting as well, and also doing spoken word poetry as well. So that's a great question. So one of the maybe like take it back. The reason why I came here was because my husband Jensen Roll went to Elon with Darren, and that's how we're all connected. But during Elon, he did his study abroad in Cape Town, South Africa. So we ended up by happenstance living a few streets away from each other and kept on bumping into each other. But that's sort of how we met, and sort of instigated me coming this side. And one of the biggest, I'd say, differences that I've experienced is just like how big of the community aspect is in South Africa. Because there's always somebody bound to have a braai, which is like a barbecue or a cookout. People are more community focused, people are always meeting up. Whereas this side, at least in the area that I'm in, it's very much productivity. We're all busy, and I've gotten sucked into that, being busy 24/7, living and dying by the calendar, but missing that community feel. So I think that's one of the biggest, at least, shifts for me. It was trying to build that community and remember that there's life outside of the 9 to 5. I've been writing since forever. I had a journal that I still have today from when I was in grade 3 or grade 4. So it was definitely, writing was a way to just share all my thoughts because there was no talking back in my household. So I spoke back in my journal. If I was afraid or if I was excited or if I was angry, I'd always write it down in my journal. And I would say as the years went on, obviously the frequency went down, but I think when I was in my first year of college or grade 12 was when I wrote my first poem or started writing my thoughts into more poetry or just like more structured. So it ended up being, instead of journaling, which I do now as a form of journaling, is poetry and writing that down. So I started off as a written poet and kept that to myself. And then one day decided to share it with a group of people. And then more people were asking about it. And then I had the courage to slowly do it some more. But overall, why I think it's important is just a way for me to just think through all the thoughts that's going through my head and just have it out of me instead of bottling it up inside. So, with, like I mentioned earlier, my writing is definitely all my thoughts. And like thoughts, they come out in various different forms or in various different times throughout the day. So I used to have my poems on napkins or notes on my phone or on my computer or written on a piece of paper. So they were never ever gathered. And every time when I had to perform my poetry, I was trying to figure out where it was. So the thought of having a book was somewhere in the back of my head, because then that could at least contain all the poems. But as I started sharing them with a lot more people, people would ask like, "Hey, have you written a book? Why haven't you put it in a book? Where can I get your poetry?" And that was very nerve-wracking because I didn't think that my poetry was important enough for it to be in an
Mm.
actual book. Because when I think about book published authors, I think huge people who've already like made a name for themselves. Um, but I had a lot of good friends, and especially Jensen as well, just say, just write it, just do it. there's a lot of people that will enjoy it. A lot of people have already asked for it. So I decided to self-publish, which made it less nerve-wracking because then there wasn't a pressure of a deadline and to make so many sales. So that's sort of the birth of it. And I'm very much, when I have something in my head, I'll get it done. And once it's done, out of sight, out of mind. So I started writing or collecting everything in the book around December of last year and then published it February, March of this year. So it was a very quick turnaround, but that's how it works with my personality. One thing that you were saying, like, what can people get out of it? So the poems in that book is definitely personal life experiences that I've converted into poetry. So there's a lot of very vulnerable aspects of it. I'd say it's not a kid's book. Some of it you can read to kids, but definitely older people check it out first, and then you can discern whether or not younger viewers should listen to it. But my biggest hope is as people read it, the beauty about poetry is that it's very subjective. So I hope that people can see somebody like me creating this book can also inspire you to either do your own creative pursuits, whether it is writing poetry, singing songs, or making music, which is also another form of poetry, creating movies or videos, which I think is a visual form of poetry. But hopefully that's inspiring you you don't have to be super big in order to do that. Um, Very similar to what you were just saying as you're recapping what I said, start for yourself. That's the biggest thing of as you start accumulating and just writing it, you're getting into a habit of how you think through things. So once you start for yourself, make sure that you like what you're producing and then create a team around you. And that's either telling your best friend about it or telling a family member that you trust or telling a partner that you trust. Because the thing about the team that you start to surround yourself is that they're going to push you. So I still have many moments today where I am so nervous and I don't want to share my poem with people or I don't want to commit to something. And I already have like my cheerleaders behind me saying that you can do it. So at least I know that there's one person in the audience that is supporting me. So start for yourself and create that team around you. Yeah, thank you very much. And I hope I inspire other people and I start to see more creatives hop up on your page and get inspired by that.